When most leaders think about succession planning, they're only thinking about the CEOs or the owners or the general manager or president stepping down. But the truth is, staff succession is just as critical, and it's one of the most overlooked drivers of long-term business success. Today, I'll show you why staff succession planning matters more than you think, and how you can protect your company from unnecessary setbacks when key people leave. So let me talk about the difference or the relationship between executive succession planning, which is what most people think about when it comes to succession planning, and staff succession planning. So let's look at a typical organizational chart. You have your president, your CEO, your whatever the title is, GM right here, and they oversee a few people. Each of them oversees a few more people. Classic organizational chart. This is the person that we're talking about leaving. So if this person goes, oftentimes, in fact, it's most common that one of these people will move up to fill that role. So this person moves up. Now there's a space here. You can see where this goes with staff succession. Now we have to figure out how do we fill that space. Maybe one of these people moves up, which leaves an opening there, which means if any of them oversee other people, maybe one of them moves up. Maybe you bring somebody in from the outside at any one of these points. But when you move somebody, you tend to leave gaps beneath and things change. Additionally, whenever you have a leadership change here, or here, or here, the people below them often reconsider, do I want to stay here, for a number of reasons, depending on their relationship with the outgoing leader, depending on their new relationship or their sense of the incoming leader, how that person responds. Basically, a change in leadership represents change. Most people tend to stay in a place of homeostasis. They like things to remain about the same. But when a leader changes, that introduces change to the system, and people begin to think about change, even if before they were kind of okay with things. Or maybe they were quietly frustrated with something or looking at greener pastures, but not really ready to move. When the leader changes, it sparks change throughout the organization. You should anticipate that you will have a transition in key staff throughout the organization within a year to a 2-year period, often within about 6 months to 18 months. Now, this doesn't mean your whole staff's going to go. You see that sometimes, though. Somebody new comes in, the way they lead, the way they operate, this whole group here eventually leaves, sometimes pretty quickly, and they bring in their whole team. Sometimes this is planned, sometimes it's accidental. There can be a bunch of reasons for it. It can happen. Oftentimes, more often what will happen is only a few of the people will leave. Like you'll have, maybe 10% of the staff, or I'm making up numbers right now. I don't know exactly. It changes on the dynamics. Point is, if you don't anticipate staff transition following executive leadership transition, you're not anticipating the actual likely future or likely scenario for your organization. It's a foreseeable, likely scenario. And so I recommend that you begin thinking through with your org chart based off of relationships, based off of how close people are to thinking about retirement, based off of a number of different dynamics. Just try to imagine through, if this person goes away and they retire, who's likely to fill that spot? If it's an internal hire, what is that likely to mean? Do these two people really, really want that job? If so, if only one of them gets it, is the other person likely to hang out? Or are they going to say, well, I want to become CEO somewhere, so I'm going to go do it someplace else? You don't know for sure, but it's a good thing to include in the staff planning. And many of those questions are fair questions to ask people. As you're looking at staff planning, asking people about, what is your anticipation for the future? What are your goals for the future, for your career? What are you hoping to achieve? How do you see this playing out for yourself here within this organization? And based off of those answers, you can start to get a sense of where they see themselves and how they anticipate the future. There's a lot of different, there can be sensitivities in how you approach this and all of that. My preference is to lean towards more transparent and open conversations. I find that that reduces the soap opera of these kinds of transitions. And most people will answer you as honestly as they understand. That being said, when you bring in a new leader from the outside, or if you move somebody up, it does change the culture, and people then make future decisions. They may initially say, yeah, that person would be great, but when they experience them in this role, they may say, maybe that's not so great. Or this person says that about them. So you want to be able to plan that out. When I talk about staff planning for succession, we're really just talking about staff planning. I call it strategic staffing. This is the same exercise that I recommend for scaling companies, incidentally. And so if you have a small organization over here and you're about to grow into a more complicated organization, you're doing $5 million a year here, and you anticipate doing $20 million a year here in 3 years, and you're going to need to add a group of people, you can ask yourself how many of these people are able to grow into this kind of a position. This is something you should think about even in succession scenarios, because if you're bringing in a new executive, the way I teach doing this, that should be tied to your overall strategic planning. And so if growth is part of that strategic planning or any kind of change, you want to incorporate that into what is the team mix or the people mix, that we're likely to have and that we need to have to be successful with what we're trying to build. So whatever that looks like for you and your organization. Another tool that can be useful for staff succession, and if you go on my website or you look at the bottom of this video, there'll be a link to my strategic staffing guide, and it'll walk you through a step-by-step process for how to do this. So there'll be things that I don't mention in the video. But part of what you want to think about is if you're looking at how are we going to prepare people to fill some of these roles, or if we move this person out because we're going to promote the CFO and they're going to take over as the CEO, and there's going to be sort of this shifting going on down here. I like to use a very basic 9-box grid, which I'm going to show a simpler version of. But on one side, I looked at this combination of performance and drive. And then over here, you can say potential or aptitude. And what we're looking at is, because you have some people that have high skills, but they're not really that driven for whatever reason. They don't seem to be that motivated or that driven to either take on new responsibilities or to up-level their skills. You have other people that have a lot of drive, but their skills aren't quite there. Maybe they need more training. Maybe they just need to be put into the right role. But for the potential for maybe the skill track that they're in right now may not be a fit for them or for where the organization is going. Either way, you want to think about, and I put this on a 9-box like this, you want to try to plot, okay, we can see this potential. We suspect that there will be 5 significant staff transitions with succession. And so per person, I would plot where are they at right now. So we've got person number 1 here, got person number 2 here, person number 3 here, number 4 here, number 5 here, and number 6 here. And what you want to think about is how do we move each of them, assuming they're all still appropriate for the company, how do we move them each up 1 level? Is basically the thought. And so this creates a coaching strategy for each individual. And you can come down and think, okay, for individual number 1, this is what we need to focus on to help them move up in their potential. Maybe it's a confidence issue. Maybe it's a training issue. Maybe it's an experience issue. But how do we get them to go from low potential where they're at right now to a higher potential space. Maybe it's putting them into a different nature of responsibility, a different job description than what they have right now. Typically, this person right here, those are your A performers. Those are people that have got drive, they got all the potential. Right here, this section of people is who you typically pull from for your senior management, or your potential senior management, or your high-level, mid-level managers, as you pull from this group of here. Everyone else here, you're making decisions on, can they be trained, can they be encouraged, can they be coached, or not. Anyway, I'm not going to go into more detail around that, but I just wanted to give you a sense of how you can practically, without it becoming an overly cumbersome process, think through, okay, to move this person up to here, we need to work a little bit on their performance and drive and a little bit on their potential, their aptitude, or their skill sets. What are one or two things we can coach this person or support this person with so that we can see if they're able to get there? Same thing for each of these. You can develop individual plans. When you do this, when you take the time to do this, these folks will feel cared for and they'll feel paid attention to in a way that in most companies they aren't. This doesn't happen very often. It kind of does casually, but not intentionally. And so if you're actually actively thinking through what is the career trajectory for each of these individuals, and then how do we intentionally help them move up a level? You're not likely to get this person here to move all the way up to there. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's not something I would anticipate happening. But being able to get anybody to move up one box is possible. So you're mostly looking at your current set that falls within this range here. How do you move them up here? Then this is the group that you're moving into your senior management roles and into your executive roles if that's where you're going. And you want to have thought this through prior to executive succession, because you want to be, you want to have already built your bench so they're ready to step in. B, you can kind of see who are the people that are most likely to move in, to want to change, whether that's a promotion of some kind internally, or they're not willing to work here and they're wanting to work someplace else. You don't know, but you can guess at it, and you make plans around those contingencies, those potential changes that are likely to happen. Again, this is another reason why I often say that succession planning is a very powerful organizational performance tool and resiliency tool, because this exercise works whether or not you're thinking about succession. It works just generally for building your team. And so I encourage that you pull from it and that you use it regularly. So when you put the right staff succession plans in place, you don't just protect your company, you make it stronger, more resilient, and better prepared to grow. If you haven't already watched it, check out my video on emergency succession planning. That is a critical plan where I recommend most people start when they're thinking about succession planning. Following that, you'll be interested in my introduction to planned executive succession. So check that one out right here.